The walls of my chamber are shaking. Dust falls from the ceiling like gray snow, and I can hear the distant boom of weapons tearing through the outer shell of my hive. I am SS Kara, Queen of the Vorthen, and I already know how this day ends. It ends with my hive broken open like an egg, and with me either dead or dragged away in chains. I have seen it happen to 3 queens before me. I will not pretend I am the exception. My guards stand around me, their claws twitching, their eyes wide with a fear they try to hide. One of them, a young soldier named Dresh, steps forward and begs me to let them fight to the last breath. I look at him and shake my head. I tell him no. I tell him to lower his weapon. He does not understand. None of them understand, but I have watched enough of my people die for a war we cannot win. I will not let more of them die for a queen who is already defeated in her own heart. I send the order through the hive. Stand down. Do not resist. Let the humans do what they came to do. The tunnels outside my chamber grow quiet. Too quiet. I expect the sound of boots, the shouting of soldiers, the cold clang of restraints. Instead, there is only silence, broken by a single set of footsteps, slow and steady, coming closer. I straighten myself on my throne, which is really just a raised platform of hardened resin, nothing grand, nothing that a human would call royal. I want to face this with whatever dignity I have left. I expect an entire squad to walk through that archway, weapons raised, ready to drag me out. Instead, one human walks in alone. He is tall, with short brown hair and tired eyes, wearing a uniform that has seen better days. He carries a rifle, but it hangs loose across his back, not raised, not aimed. He stops a few steps into the room and looks at me the way someone looks at a puzzle they are not sure how to solve. I wait for him to speak the words I have heard before, in reports from other hives. Words like surrender or compliance or you have no other choice. Instead, he says something that catches me completely off guard. He asks me if anyone is hurt in here. I do not answer right away. I am trying to understand the trick. There must be a trick. Humans do not walk into the heart of an enemy hive and ask about our wounded. I tell him carefully that some of my people are injured from the bombardment, but none are dying. He nods slowly, like this matters to him, like it is not just a detail in a report he will file later. His name, he tells me, is Callum. He says it plainly, without any of the arrogance I expected from a conqueror. I ask him where the rest of his soldiers are, why he came alone into a hive that could have killed him 100 times over between the outer wall and this chamber. He tells me his unit is holding position outside. He came in by himself because he wanted to talk before anything else happened. I laugh, though there is no humor in it. I tell him that queens who talk to humans usually end up the same way as queens who fight them. He does not argue with me. He simply sits down on the floor, cross-legged, like we are equals. Like this is a normal conversation between 2 people instead of a defeated queen and the soldier of the empire that just crushed her home. Over the next hours, he asks me questions no human has ever asked before. He asks about our history, long before this war started. He asks what the Vorthen wanted, what we dreamed of before the fighting began. I find myself answering him, slowly at first, then more freely, because no one has asked me these things in so long that I had almost forgotten the answers myself. I tell him about the nurseries beneath the hive, where our young are raised in warmth and darkness until they are ready to see light. I tell him about the songs my people once sang before battle became the only thing we knew. He listens like every word matters. I do not trust it. I have been taught that human kindness is a leash disguised as a gift, something used to make prisoners easier to control. But some small part of me, a part I do not like to admit exists, wants to believe he is telling the truth. Days pass. I'm not thrown into a cell. I'm not chained. I'm kept in my own chamber under guard but treated more like a guest than a prisoner. Food is brought to me that respects what my body can eat. My injured are given medicine instead of being left to suffer. Every day, Callum returns, and every day he asks more questions, and slowly, without meaning to, I begin answering not just with facts, but with feelings I thought I had buried under duty and grief. One evening, he brings something with him. A small device that projects images into the air, flickering scenes of human history. He shows me wars fought between humans themselves, terrible wars that nearly destroyed their own species long before they ever reached the stars. He shows me ruins of cities that humans once lived in, cities they later rebuilt, cities that stand today as reminders of what was almost lost. He tells me that humanity remembers what it feels like to almost disappear. He says that memory is why some of his people believe that turning my hive to ash would only create another empty ruin, another loss the universe does not need. He says his commanders do not all agree with him. Some of them want my hive destroyed as an example, a warning sent to the rest of the Vorthon scattered across the stars. He says he disobeyed a direct order by walking in here alone, instead of waiting for that outcome to be carried out. For the first time since the siege began, I feel something other than resignation. I feel the smallest flicker of something that might be hope, and it frightens me more than the bombardment ever did. Hope is dangerous. Hope has been taken from me before. I ask him why. Why risk his own position, his own safety, his own future, for a queen and a hive that fought against his people for so long? He looks at me for a long moment before answering. He says that somewhere along the way, war stopped feeling like justice to him and started feeling like habit. He says that habits can be broken, but only if someone is willing to be the one who breaks them first. I do not know what to say to that. No one has ever spoken to me with such honesty, not even my own advisors, who were always careful to tell me what they thought I wanted to hear. I begin to wonder if everything I believed about humans was built on the actions of the worst among them, and not the best. Then the day comes that I feared most, and yet somehow least expected. Voices echo through the tunnels outside my chamber, sharp and commanding, nothing like the quiet steps Callum always brings. I hear boots marching in formation, many of them, and I know without being told that his superiors have arrived. The look on his face when he hears them tells me everything. He warned me this might happen. Now it is happening. A woman enters first, her uniform decorated with marks of high rank, her expression carved from stone. Behind her come several more soldiers, weapons raised this time, aimed not at me directly, but held in a way that says they are ready. She looks at Callum with open anger before she even looks at me. She calls him reckless. She tells him he was ordered to confirm the hive's surrender and report back, not to negotiate, not to sit unarmed in a room with the enemy queen for days on end. She says the council back home has already decided. My hive is to be destroyed, not as punishment, but as a message, so that no other Vorthon hive dares to resist again. I feel the floor tilt beneath me, though nothing has physically moved. This is the ending I expected from the very beginning. This is the ending I made peace with before Callum ever walked through that archway. And yet now, having tasted even a few days of something different, the thought of losing it feels heavier than it ever did before. Callum stands his ground. He tells the officer, whose name I later learn is Miriam, that destroying this hive would prove nothing except that humanity never intended to change, no matter what they claimed. He says that if the council wants an example, let it be an example of mercy instead of another example of ruin. Miriam's eyes narrow, but she does not immediately order her soldiers to act. Something in his words has landed, even if she does not want to admit it. She turns to me then, studying me the way one studies an unfamiliar weapon, unsure if it is safe to hold or ready to detonate. She asks me directly why she should believe anything I say, given the history between our people. She asks what makes me different from the queens who came before me, the ones who resisted until the very end. This is the moment. I understand that clearly. Whatever I say next will decide not only my fate but the fate of every Vorthon left in this hive, and perhaps the fate of every hive still standing across the stars. I do not kneel. I do not beg. I have seen queens do both, and it changed nothing for them. Instead, I offer her something no queen has offered before. I tell her I will open every record my hive holds, every piece of knowledge about our history, our technology, our weaknesses, and our strengths, without hiding anything. I tell her that a queen who still had something to hide would negotiate carefully, would trade secrets one at a time to protect herself. I offer everything all at once, because I have decided that survival built on lies is no survival at all. I tell her that my people are tired of losing everything to a war neither side seems able to end through force alone. I tell her that if humanity wants an example, let this hive be the example of what happens when both sides choose to stop fighting long enough to listen. Silence fills the chamber. Miriam looks at me for a long moment, then at Callum, then back at me again. I can see the war happening behind her eyes, the same war that must be happening across her entire species, between the instinct to destroy what once threatened them and the exhausted hope that something better might finally be possible. Callum speaks again, quietly this time. He tells her that he is putting his entire record, his career, everything he has built as a soldier behind this decision. He says if he is wrong, she can hold him responsible personally. He says he does not believe he is wrong. Miriam lowers her weapon first. Slowly, the other soldiers behind her do the same. She tells Callum that if this goes badly, the consequences will fall on both of them equally. He nods, accepting that without hesitation. She turns to me one final time and tells me that this is not forgiveness. It is a chance. Nothing more, nothing less. I tell her that a chance is more than my people have been given in a very long time, and I intend to use it well. Over the following weeks, everything changes. Reports go back to human command about the surrender that ended in cooperation instead of destruction. Other hives, hearing what happened here, begin sending their own signals, cautious and afraid, but curious about the possibility of something other than annihilation. I do not know yet if this will spread far enough to end the larger war. I do not know if every human commander will make the same choice Miriam eventually made. But I know that for the first time since the fighting began, there is a path forward that does not end in ash. I think back often to the day I gave the order to stand down, certain I was only delaying the end, not changing it. I had accepted my fate as fully as any queen before me. I had made peace with dying, or worse, with watching my people be dragged away while I could do nothing to stop it. I was ready for an ending, not a beginning. Callum changed that, not with weapons, not with threats, but with the simple, stubborn choice to ask questions instead of giving orders. He walked into a hive prepared to destroy him and found, instead, a queen prepared to give up. Between the two of us, something shifted that neither side expected. I still do not know what the future holds for the Vorthan or for humanity. Old wounds do not close overnight, and there are many voices on both sides who still believe destruction is the only safe outcome. But I have learned that fate is not always something to be accepted quietly. Sometimes it takes one person, refusing to walk the path everyone expects, to prove that another way is possible. I was ready to die as a conquered queen. Instead, because one human refused to let that be the end of my story, I find myself alive, standing not in chains, but in something that feels, for the first time in a long time, like the beginning of trust.